Okay, hi everyone. You might be watching. I'm just going to turn the video, the screen off so it doesn't distract us. Okay, so we've played our Twinkles. The other thing that I do a lot with my students and at teacher training is tonalisation. So we'll just tune again first and then do that. And about. Takes a long time for this piano to actually go on.
That's a really bad placement of my TV.
It's not now because I'm not going to go back to the piano now. So it's fine. So the bow is obviously a very Japanese thing that has been taken by Suzuki elsewhere and is about obviously showing respect from everyone in the room to everyone else in the room. But I think for the kids in the lessons it's a really good way just to show that this is when it's time to start actually paying attention and working, and then when you're finished, you know, when it's time to go, because otherwise it's quite sort of nebulous whether you're, you know, when you tune, like it's up to you whether you tune first and then do the bow and then tune. I think for me that tends to change when the kids are doing their own tuning. We do the bow first, but when they're little and I'm tuning and chatting with the parent about how practice was and stuff, that happens before the bow, and then when they're in front of me ready to go, that's when we do it. But yeah, okay, so the tonalisation is actually written in the beginning of book 2, but it's a G major arpeggio. I'm just going to play it to you so you don't need to play it. And we play it very slowly. And then you step up twice, step back down, and back down again. And then you go to the D and just add a little extra note there for the E. And finish the arpeggio. So my students learn this towards the end of book 1, obviously G major finger pattern. It's really great to get the resonance of the violin really coming out and for them to really start listening to when each note that they should be hearing the ringing sound on is doing the correct amount of resonance. So I'll just talk you through it like I did then in case you don't remember it, but start with the slow G major arpeggio. Do the repeat in the minor, but we won't do that right now. Okay, so let's play Twinkle Theme. So we've played a twinkle and then we're just going to keep going through, and basically it's just for you to get an idea of how the pieces are played, and then obviously we'll dig into more detail in the teaching points and keep coming back to them over and over again. middle there's a sort of set of etudes, mostly which Dr. Suzuki wrote, and then there are the kind of real pieces at the end, that is Bach, minuets, and then Having Fun by Schumann, and Gossip Rod.
Yeah.
So, and there's also differences how we would play it as we are playing now, the nicest way that we can play it, and how we might play it with the students, or expect them to play it, but for now we're just going to play.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Song of the Wind. Okay, so Go Tell It Rhodey is the next one. And troughs, overall your speed of learning is faster, and more importantly your enjoyment of learning is much higher than if you just go grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, you know, like it's sort of ever increasing levels of difficulty. So the first, obviously for the children, learning to play the violin and then learning their twinkles takes at least a year in most cases, and is a really big challenge. Yeah. And then often they get to lightly row and they're just like, oh right, yeah, I can do this, like it's easy. So they've got this kind of big mountain of starting, and then lightly row is relatively easy, and then Song of the Wind is more of a challenge because it's got staccato bows and retakes and hopping 3, and then Go Tell It Rhodey is quite another like easy, you know, often they find it quick to pick up and there's not too much trickiness about it. And then so I like to think about the pieces in book 1 that are really big challenges as mountain pieces, and I talk to the students and their parents about this is a mountain piece, it's not going to come as easily as the other things did, and we prepare for it in advance. So Go Tell It Rhodey, there's not very much that they need to prepare while they're on Song of the Wind. They just finish Song of the Wind and then they start Go Tell It Rhodey. But O Come Little Children has so many things in it that are really tricky for them. The string crossing is difficult, the double up bows are difficult, the bow distribution is tricky, the last line is hard for them to get their fingers around, they haven't really played E3 very much before. All of this makes it much more difficult, so we would take a much more step-by-step approach and start some of those steps while they're still in the earlier pieces. So that's just like for you to kind of think about while we play it.
Yeah.
Okay, so. and, well, relatively accessible for them. So. Exercises using the fourth finger, and then in review, so all of the pieces that they learn will go into what's called review, and then they keep practicing those pieces. And that's one thing I should have said when we were doing that this morning, that just like when you are learning a language, you add words, you don't drop a word to add a new word. We don't drop the old pieces to add the new pieces, because then you can only ever play one piece, right?
Yeah.
And it seems very sad after 15 years of playing the violin that you might be able to play maybe 3 pieces for your grade 8 or whatever. Whereas Suzuki kids can play hundreds of pieces by the time they're 18, literally. And off by heart, which is really lovely.
Yeah.
So the review is the old pieces that then you keep developing their tone and intonation, their musicianship. You would put dynamics in after they do it the first time. And that 4, for example, is exactly the kind of thing we would do in review.
Okay.
But some people do them earlier. Like in the book, it has even lightly rowed. The fourth is a finger. The fourth finger is an option. I don't want to listen to lightly rowed fingers from 4-year-olds. Thank you. But yeah. So generally, it's perpetual motion is the song that we start the 4s in. Okay, where are we? Long ago. I'm sure you can both spot it immediately. Think about what the new thing is that's being introduced.
Try to get children to put their finger on both strings. Because I've always, I mean, obviously I didn't.
No, what we do try and get them to do is hop the 1, but keep it down while the 3 goes, so that you don't hear. Yeah. But blocking doesn't come until later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're at 3. Mostly that's more of a roll or a hop still.
Yeah.
And then book 2.
But generally, do you think about fingers down? Or not at all? Do you talk about that in these early pieces?
You mean blocking, like keeping a finger over both strings?
No, keeping just fingers down when you play.
Like hangers.
Yeah, so as you go up, you keep
Yeah.
them down, but when
Yeah.
you come from the top, you go independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't seem to be the case with a lot of the people I've picked up from places. They just do this the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, most violin teachers have never done a single day training in their lives. They've learnt the violin, they've gone to music college, they can play really well, but they've no idea about teaching at all. So you are already more qualified than most teachers, so, this kind of level of like really in-depth, well, where do you keep the fingers down? When would you first do a 4th finger? Where are you going to move, how are you going to introduce new strings? Like mostly it's just a big chuck it all at the kid, see who comes out well, and then teach them how to do it better.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And that's why it's so inequitable.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, make sure that you're offering everyone the chance to do it the best way possible,
Yeah.
and then everyone can go not far as they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So, Allegro. A B big favourite.
Oh, I know.
Not a big mountain piece for most kids. Some of them really struggle with the fast notes because it's the first time we've had quick quavers.
Yeah.
But mostly they just really love it. And it's a really good place to introduce leading for the first time, probably in review. So we will just start at the beginning. So we teach the kids about, thinking 1, 2, 3. And then you do exactly what you did at the beginning. Lovely, because what happens with the kids is they play, and then the teacher's there kind of going, and then they go, and they like that. It's one of my bugbears that so many teachers do that. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, you can do it quickly, but they can't yet. Yeah, there we go. Okay, put back to motion, 4 fingers. Woo! So any other observations about the music that we've played so far?
I was wondering about the mountains and the easy ones. I thought, well, that doesn't seem harder than this. So that's a revelation to me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's very unusual and it's so great.
Yeah.
And it works so well. It's a really...
And I like the idea of introducing, say, some elements of vocal that children while they're still doing whatever it is.
Go tell it where to.
Yeah.
So that's called preview.
Yeah.
So we talk quite a lot about triple layer teaching. You've got the preview, which is getting ready for what's coming up next.
Yeah.
You've got your working piece, which is obviously the piece you're working on, and then you've got your review. So I wish we could say review, because then it would nicely rhyme. But anyway, the review, which is the old pieces where you're trying to work on becoming a better musician, basically.
And would you be working all those things simultaneously?
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things we'll talk about when we want to break, maybe after the D majors, is like what kind of practice, roughly what kind of practice would be expected at each phase. But I mean, essentially today, you know, everything we talk about today, we will talk about multiple times. So there's nothing that you have to like think, okay, I've got to remember this forever now. You know, we will do our review and come back to them as well. Yeah, okay, so let's play Allegretto. student, because some of them need help with their string crossing, so open strings. Some of them need help with their fours, so fours, and it really just depends. And then some of them you can just ask them to mix it up and they're kind of with it enough to get it. Others they have to just do what they've learned for now. Yeah, so we're kind of moving into the D major section. You've done perpetual motion in D as well, but this is like the set of pieces that are mostly on A and D rather than mostly on E and A. And then andantino. Accents. If you try and teach that the first time they learn this piece, you'll be on this piece for months because it's really hard. The fourth fingers and the open strings are one of the main teaching points. So for me, I do always teach that you use the 4 because you're on the same string, and then the open A because you're going up to the A. So it always goes 4 open, and then for that reason, to keep the pattern the same, I'll use a 4 there, but then open. But you know, it's up to you. That stuff is not like set in stone. Allegretto and andantino, it's very confusing to remember which is which. For my brain, I find it helpful to remember that the letters of the names and the letters of the first notes are in alphabetical order. So obviously they both start with A, but if you think about allegretto and andantino, L is earlier in the alphabet, and then if you think about D and F sharp, D is earlier in the alphabet. So allegretto is the one that starts on the D, and andantino is the one that starts on the F sharp. Because most people can remember the tunes, but they don't remember which name goes with which, and they don't remember which order it's in.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. So that's the way that I have found helpful.
Allegretto before andantino.
Yeah. And the D starts before the F sharp.
Yeah.
But some other people are just like, that doesn't help me at all.
Also because perpetual motion starts on D as well, and it comes after that.
Oh yeah, so that's another good way to remember it. It's a DD.
But I can still forget that it was allegretto, but now I won't because it's the L.
Yeah.
So now I think we've got it sorted.
Yeah, excellent. There you go. Good, so we'll play Etude and then we'll have a bit more of a chat about what's going on. Etude is a huge mountain piece. Really, really needs getting ready for very carefully. It's the first piece we have in G major. It's the first piece we have in all 4 strings. It's the first piece we have that uses high 2s and low 2s. It's the first piece with low 2s, and it's also the first piece with low 2s and high 2s. Like, we don't even get one piece that's just got low 2s. It's kind of mental. I don't think it really should be there. I think it's too much of a mountain. But there are ways to teach it and ways to introduce other repertoire that means you can soften the blow. Yeah. But many children really struggle with it. I often will teach the singles first, and then we'll go on to the minuets and come back and do the doubles. So that's like 2 separate pieces. If you aren't doing loads of G major stuff way in advance, like from perpetual motion, they're just going to hit a brick wall. So they've got to be really comfortable with G major arpeggio, G major scale, the finger patterns, low 2s, way before they get anywhere to Etude.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to remember. turn my computer on in case Lucy appears. Yeah, cool. So we will do lots and lots and lots of stuff on pre-twinkle practice, so the kids who can't yet play all of their twinkles with their fingers in time. But I think for most teachers, obviously it's entirely up to you. I'm trying not to use the word obviously too many times, so you can shout at me every time I do. Apart from when it really is obvious. It's not obvious, but it is up to you. You know, my job here is not to churn out a certain type of teacher who will do exactly what I tell them to do. My job here is to help you become the kind of teachers that you want to become. So I'm very much, you know, educating in terms of bringing out rather than putting in.
Thank you for saying that.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're very welcome. I hope it wasn't a surprise from me, but I know it is a surprise in some circumstances.
Well, I was hoping that was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's no Suzuki police. Like, as long as you pass your exams, which is, like I said, very hard not to. I've never had anyone fail any of their exams so far. I'm sure someone will one day, but I'm sure it's not going to be any of you. You know, there's no Suzuki police that are going to come around to your studio and check that you're teaching the right, you know, whatever amount of practice, bow distribution and Aptitude. Like, you know, there's advice I can offer you, and there are lessons that I've learned the hard way by messing them up myself. I will try and help you learn an easier way by taking my advice, but I'm sure there will be plenty of things that you'll be like, I don't think that works, and then maybe in 20 years' time you'll be like, that, yeah, should have listened. But you know, I did exactly the same, and that's completely fine. So the thing with practice for pre-twinkles is you've basically got a choice of two main approaches for setting practice and how you kind of help the parents to do that practice. I think for most teachers, kind of 5 activities is a really good pre-twinkle practice.
Yeah.
Those 5 activities, if you do them in the lesson, will take about 7 minutes. Some teachers might only give 3. You know, if you're dealing with a 3-year-old, you might decide to only do 2 or 3 things. If you've got an 8-year-old, it will be different. But as a general rule for sort of 4 and 5-year-olds, I think most people are kind of setting 4 or 5 activities. So that could be make 10 beautiful bow holds, put your violin up 5 times and then hold it up while you listen to a piece on the recording on the last time. Do some soaping, which is when you do the rhythm on your arm as if you're like, you know, washing yourself with soap. Listen to a piece and see if you can clap along with the pulse, and sing a song for what's coming up next, or do some bowing in the air. You know, there are millions of things that you could do, but that's kind of, like, that kind of amount is a decent practice for a new student. The approach that you can take with practice is either, and I'm going to talk mostly about the parents' approach, but obviously they will be guided by you, not obviously, they will be guided by you. They have a choice between try and find 7 minutes in the day where they can do that practice and try and get the child to focus as much as possible for that time, get through it as quickly as possible, boom, bam, bosh, whatever, done. Or to find a half-an-hour slot, for example, or a 20-minute slot, where if there's faffing about, which there inevitably will be, it doesn't matter, it's not a problem. But it's a longer time slot for them to find. So on the parent talk that I do, I recommend that the parents try and find half an hour. Many days they won't need half an hour, but the brilliant, brilliant thing about practicing having a slot that's in your mind as the adult half an hour long is that when your child needs to go to the toilet, when your child needs a snack, when your child is uncomfortable in their jumper, when they realise they've got their shoes on the wrong way around and they need to put them on the right feet, when they want to find a particular book to read, you know, during practice as a reward for each thing they've done, when they want to have a snack, all of these things that children do, you can be relaxed about it and you can be like, okay, yeah, great, let's just do 5 bow holds and then we can go and find a different jumper for you. And okay, yeah, just hold your violin up like this while we listen to this song and then we'll go and get you a snack. Okay, yeah, you want to read this book? Brilliant, let's do 1 bow hold and then read 1 page and then do another bow hold and read another page and do another bow hold and read another page. And this is, I'm absolutely convinced, one of the ways in which we can build a joyful experience of practice, not every single day, but most of the time you can have a lovely time with your young child when the pressure's off.
Yeah.
And when the pressure's on and it's like trying to get them to get ready for school in the morning, put your shoes on, brush your teeth, it should take 3 minutes and it somehow takes 15 every single day, and everyone ends up shouting at their children because it's like, we have to go to school, we are going to be late, put your shoes on, and you just don't understand why they can't just put them on their feet. Like, it seems like such an obvious thing. And for most parents this is a kind of, not maybe daily reality, but you know, very frequent occurrence. So with the practice, the main benefit of taking that approach of finding that extra time is that you don't have to be anxious about the time. And if your child's having a really focused day and they just get through everything quickly, brilliant. But if they're not and they need a lot of extra faffing about time, you have it built in, so you can be relaxed about it. The other major benefit of that is that once you've got that routine, sorry, do you want me to slow down? It's going to be on the recording. Just shout if you want me to slow down ever. The other major benefit to that is that once you've got your primary school routine, presuming your child is in reception, or maybe you build that routine once they join reception, you are not going to have to change that until they go to secondary school. I would never ask a child who's in primary school to do more than half an hour's practice a day. They may choose to occasionally, but you know, if they're practicing half an hour every day that they're not coming to Suzuki Hub, or even maybe actually every day, that's brilliant. That's really, really fantastic. And I don't think that they would need to extend that time. And what will happen naturally is that as the children start to be more focused in practice and be more productive and less faffing about, the teacher will be giving them more things to do in practice. Their focus will be improving, so there's less faffing about, and therefore they will practice for longer, but the practice slot remains the same. Whereas if you say to your pre-twinkle parents, just takes 5 minutes to do practice, so find 5 minutes every day, and then 3 months later you're going to be like, okay, now it's 10 minutes, and then 6 months after that it's going to be 15 minutes, and then a year later it's going to be 20 minutes, and all of this is within the kind of constraints of that parent trying to get that amount of practice done in pretty much that amount of time, which just doesn't happen, and they need to be reassured a lot that it's really normal for you as the teacher to be able to say, right, let's do 5 bow holds, let's put your violin up, you will get through 5 times as much practice, or you know, learning in a lesson that they will in a practice of the same amount of time. Because essentially, most children are going to do what you ask them to do, and most children are not going to do what their parents ask them to do.
Yeah.
That's the basics. So you have to keep saying to the parents, look, I've sent you this tiny amount of stuff for practice. It will take you the same amount of time as it's taken us in this lesson. And that's partly what you pay me for, is to get through more stuff, but it's also, that's why you need that extra time so that you can be relaxed about doing that, because as soon as it becomes a battle and the children are feeling stressed and the parents are feeling pressured and you've got to leave before you've got everything done, then everyone's on edge right from the start.
Yeah.
And if you have half an hour and you haven't got through everything, then you still just stop. And you say, okay, we'll try again tomorrow, never mind. You know, and if your child's been naughty, maybe you put them on the naughty step. Like, it's not like it has to be endlessly positive. You know, one of the ways in which we build discipline in the kids is from them understanding that there are lines that if they cross, they'll get in trouble. But faffing about normally is not one of those lines. Like throwing your violin at the wall, yeah, go and sit on the naughty step. You know, kicking and screaming, that might be something that is considered naughty. But again, these are all the individual family cultures change. You know, what's acceptable from my daughter will not be acceptable from your son, may not be acceptable in your family. You know, it's different all the time. There are differences that we have to be aware of and cater for. But I think, so that sort of 7 minutes of practice to start off with is a good kind of guide. And I think the other thing to say about practice before we talk about what they do later on in book 1 is that, in my experience, which is now 22 years or whatever, the amount of variation in how much the kids pick up is 90% maybe to do with how much work they do, and not to do with their learning styles and learning at their own pace. And you know, there's a lot of emphasis on families and children learning at their own pace in their own way. But in my experience, a lot of the presumption that people make about the slower kids or the faster kids is because they think that aptitude is accounting for more of the difference than it is, and it's because they don't really know what's happening in practice. So if you're having those conversations where you say, how was practice? Yeah, it was great. That might mean, yeah, it was great. Neither of us cried all week. We've done 5 minutes every day and nobody cried. Brilliant. That might be brilliant, but you might have been setting them 20 minutes of practice every day, so it might not be brilliant. And the point is, if you don't know, then you can't help and you can't assess your students properly. Whereas if you know, like, so at the Hub we have private lesson records. I will go and get them in a minute. And one of the things that we take a note of is how many times you practiced and how many times you listened this week. So I can show my students who are not making great progress, look, the reason you're not making as good progress as this person is that you're getting 3s and 4s in your practices and your listenings and have done for 5 years. I don't mind, but if you want to keep up with the person who's a book ahead of you the same age as you, having learnt for the same amount of time, the reason they're a book ahead of you is because they're getting 6s and 7s every week for 4 years, and the difference between that is almost double the amount of time that they've put in as opposed to you. It's not because you're not good at the violin, it's not because you're not committed, it's because you're doing a different amount of work than they are. Just like if someone does maths homework every single day, they're going to be really good at maths compared to the children who do maths homework once a week. So I think this is the thing, that there's a lot of kind of mysteriousness about practice and about aptitude, and like, whether we use this word talented, and which is, tricky. And like now with my Suzuki training, when people say you're so talented, I feel like I'm not actually, I've just worked really bloody hard. Because talent is like that weird thing that it's some sort of gift that's been given to you by some external force. And it's not, I know people mean it as a compliment, but when people say that I'm talented, it doesn't feel like it feels like a denial of the work that I've done. And so I tend not to use it, but it is semiotics when you come down to it. Aptitude is a kind of similar thing, but certainly I have had some kids who find it really easy, and therefore that virtuous cycle of practice starts straight away, and they go really quickly, and then they really enjoy going really quickly, so then they want to do more, so then they do more, so then they go even faster, and the cumulative effect of that is that they're really amazing. Like one of my students, Lila, who you can see on YouTube, has been learning for 5 years, maybe 6 years. She's 12, she's finishing book 5, and she's practiced and listened every single day for more than 4 years in a row, and she does double the next day if she was sick. So she is also homeschooled, which does make a difference, but fantastically committed. And of course, she's one of the younger kids in the group who's at that level, because most kids, like my kid, do a few, maybe Tilly does 5 practices a week, and then she comes here twice a week as well, and she's doing fine. She's 14 and in the middle of book 5, and that's great. I'm very pleased for her and with her, but it's not like, and I know that it's not because she's less good at the violin. It is partly because she's less interested. Like at 14, you think, well, yeah, you have to make your own choice. Lila is really interested in the violin, and she's 12. But possibly if I'd made Tilly practice exactly all of those same times, she would be at the same level. She would have been at the same level at that age. It's just not. I just don't think there's as much variation as some people think there is. It's mostly what you put in is what you get out, and it is cumulative. So the more you put in, the bigger the rewards. If you practice 3 times versus 6 times, you'll get half as good. The people who are doing it 6 times a week will get more than twice as good, because every day you consolidate things. And then the people who do it 7 days a week will get even more.
That's assuming that they are practicing in the right way, right?
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is another thing that Suzuki, how does anyone do it if they're not doing Suzuki? Because the parents can be taught how to help really effectively, and most children can't be taught how to practice effectively, but under the age of, 10, 12, 18, how long is a piece of string really?
But do we have that process that we teach them how to practice?
Yeah, every lesson really, we keep talking about practice. Yeah, and we will talk a lot about it. But to go back to just kind of what we were going to just sort of cover very broadly right now. So you may be teaching or setting 4 or 5 activities for your pre-twinklers. And then as they start to learn those pieces up to about O Come Little Children, we would be increasing the number of review pieces that they play. So by the time they can get to the Twinkles where they play all of their Twinkles, they're probably too young still to play every twinkle each practice. Some of them will, but probably most of mine I would say I'm asking them to play three, so half of the Twinkles each day and to swap them round. And then they would be doing some bowing in the air to get bowing for the next piece. They might be doing exercises with the left hand to get ready for whatever it is, hopping 3s or 4th fingers or D string. But the review is the bit that really expands as they go through book 1. So review is playing the old pieces that they can already play accurately and well and trying to continue to develop them. A lot of parents will think that we do review so they don't forget the old pieces, which is a very minor benefit of doing review. The major benefits of doing review are you've got the time and space to think about how you're playing what you're playing. You know what bowing it is, you know what note comes next, you know where the repeat is. You don't even have to think about how the song goes like you do with a new piece. By the time the kids are on Go Time Ready, they can play their Twinkles without thinking about it. So then they can think about, is my bow straight? Am I holding the bow properly? Are my fingers in tune? Is there the first echo that we have for dynamics is in Go Time Ready. Most kids, I would say, probably don't learn that the first time through, but then by the time they're on allegro, they can think about, right, how do I do that? How do I make it quiet there? And where does it get quiet? Where do I have to be in the bow? And what are my feet doing? And do I have locked knees? And is my spine straight? And how's my violin posture? And all these things which are immensely, occupying your brain to think about. Of course we can't think about them when you're just thinking about how the piece goes. Because all of your brain is thinking, where's the next note? Which bowing is it? What finger is it? How does it go? Is this the first time or the second time? So the review, the benefit of being able to actually play musically and develop your musicianship skills in the review is immense. And it's an amazing toolkit to have. So that is the kind of reason that the practice gets extended through book 1 is mostly that, so let's look at by allegro. So they can play 6 twinkle variations, 5 twinkle variations of the theme. Light Rose, Song of the Wind, Go Tell Aunt Rhody, O Come Little Children, May Song, Long Long Ago, and they're learning allegro. So they've got 6 pieces plus their Twinkles. So instead of doing 3 twinkle variations, they might do 3 twinkle variations and then 3 pieces. So that's a lot longer playing, but it's enjoyable for them because these are pieces that they know how to play. They're pieces that they hopefully are enjoying getting better at, and it's not a struggle. And then they have a few minutes of struggling with a box maybe, or trying the new piece and trying to get it, good enough to go into review. And then by that time you would have some sight reading being incorporated into practice as well. So if you've got that half-an-hour session, probably it's about 15 minutes of actual practice. It takes about, the twinkle variations are about 90 seconds each. So if 4.5 minutes to play 3. And then the rest of the pieces are mostly less than a minute. So to play 6 pieces, which sounds like a lot to the kids and their parents, but actually that's 10 minutes practice. And then to do one box 5 times, maybe 10 times.
What's a box?
A repetition chunk. So for example, to make sure the one's staying on and the 3 is hopping, or again to make sure the one's staying on, but to make sure that it's fast enough. The tricky things like that, tricky bits I put in a box and then we tell them how many times they've got to do it. And the other thing you'll get loads of is help with how to make the boring bits of practice, like repetitions, work okay. Have some little toys, say, okay, can you do it for Mr. Lion? And then they'll do it and you put it on there. Okay, here's a zebra, can you do it for the zebra? And, or build a tower, or collect I don't know, coins, or, you know, there are so many ways that we can help you, I can help you, and then you can help the parents to make those bits of practices run okay.
Practicing like the difficult bits after the review always is like that?
No, so I'm not going through it in order.
Okay, so
I would very much recommend that they always start with their Twinkles and then they do sight reading, because the parents forget about sight reading and then they run out of time and then it gets dropped off the end, and it implies that it's the least important thing to do it last. So for most of my students, I would recommend that they do their Twinkle. So mid-book 1, Twinkles, 2 or 3 variations, sight reading, probably 1 or 2 lines, really not very much, like less than 2-3 minutes.
So you do introduce the sight reading in the middle of the book?
I start sight reading actually from the book around go to heart reading. But we're not using the Suzuki book to sight read, because sight reading is reading pieces you do not know how they go. So it's physically impossible for them to sight read their music. They can read the music, or rather, at this stage, let's face it, they can look at the music. They might see that there's a 3 there, which might help them remember that, but they're not music reading this level of piece, because their playing ability is so much better than their sight reading ability.
Yeah.
So they'd be reading open strings and ones at the level, or just rhythm on open A. I use a book called I Can Read Music by Joanne Martin, but we'll talk more about that. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, we do use that.
Yeah, I always start at page 53 for rhythms, because that's the Twinkle rhythms. The only thing I have a problem with in that book is that it starts with long bows, which for the 5-year-olds, they can't play long bows yet. Yeah. It's much harder to count 1, 2, 3, 4 than it is to go, oh, that's Huckleberry and Jello, Huckleberry, Jello. Easy. So we do that. And then lots of people will then do their working piece, so do their box first. That is something I require them to do. Do the box before you play the piece through.
Oh. Do you do a box before you to prepare for a piece?
Yeah, so that would be preview.
Yeah.
At this level, they're not really doing preview for pieces yet. The first piece that they would actually start bits of ahead of time is normally Aptitude. But sometimes, I come little children, I guess it depends what you consider to be part of the piece, but like they would be doing this for a couple little children. And stop in the middle. So that is kind of, yeah, obviously it's deeply connected to the piece, but it's not how the piece actually goes in advance. But the preview, they're often, it depends on the kids. Some kids are resistant to doing new things, but the kids who are excited to do new things, preview is quite good to go last, because they don't want to miss it out, because they want to get ready for the new pieces. So normally, warm up, Twinkles, sight reading, box for the new piece, and then either preview for the new pieces coming up or reviews, and then vice versa. If you've done the preview, you do the review, and if you've done the reviews, you do the preview.
Did you say warm up and then Twinkle, or is
no, warm up with the Twinkles are the warm up?
Yes. Do you, when you're teaching Twinkle, do you get them to? Are you very fussy about their bow hold and everything all the time? Because you were saying keep your, all the things that they can think about once they know the piece, and I never know how much to fuss.
I think it depends on each student.
Yeah.
The ideal situation is that they master each step before they move on, but in reality, when I was a young teacher, I had students who'd done 3 years on the Twinkles, because I was so terrified of letting them go on before they could do everything perfectly. And of course that just kills any motivation they have, because they think, I'm never going to be able to play anything that's not Twinkle.
Yeah.
And they feel that you're never happy with them. And the reality is they've just got to play some pieces, and then they'll have reviews that they can use to refine what they're doing. So yes, I would love them to play when they're playing beautifully, but I won't stop them going on if they've got a problem.
Okay.
Because joy has to be middle, the centre of everything.
Yeah.
And it's pretty joyless to be on your Twinkle variations for 3 years. There's a specific student that comes into my mind, and I just think, sorry, Joseph. I'm sure he's fine. He's probably about 28 by now. Anyway, so that's the main difference. And then obviously as they go through, not obviously, as they go through book one, towards the end of the book, there is more preview. They're starting to learn scales. So the first scale that they do, I mean, we do A major while they're still pre-twinklers, but they don't really know that it's a scale. They just do that pattern.
Yeah.
And then when they're on May song, because the first bar is an arpeggio, that's when I introduce, here is an A major scale and arpeggio, and then they know what it is, and they would do it as part of their reviews. And then before they do Long Long Ago, they would do D major to practice playing on the D string, and we do the Twinkles starting on the D string and other pieces on D and A instead, so that when they get to Long Long Ago, it's not the first time they've played the D string. And then similarly, they would learn their G major way ahead of Etude, which is the first piece in G major, so that they're comfortable with it, and they learn the top octave, well, separately from the bottom octave, and then they put them together. And we would do other pieces, like you can do Sad Go Turn Up Roadie with the low two. And so when they're first starting doing low twos, we play with an F sharp in the middle. There's a glimmer of hope. And then they get sad again. And you fake cry all the way through, way before Etude, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, and then they can learn, and then in preparation for the end of book one, they can learn very sad Go Turn Up Roadie, where they play. And then Aunt Rhodey goes to Egypt. Anyway, we will do all of these when we get to Go Turn Up Roadie and teaching points. But there are loads of fun ways, and there's a really good piece called Hungarian Dance, which my friend and colleague Ian Butterworth wrote, which goes... And we play it 4 times, one really slow, medium, fast, slow, getting faster, and then at the end they go, hey! And it's got like a Chardashy type of piano part. And for lots of my students, that's the first low two they ever do, is Hungarian dance, apart from, just like as an exercise to actually explain it. So as they then get into the second half of book one, the practice is longer because they're older, they have more pieces to review. We would maybe be asking the kids by the end of the book to be doing 1 twinkle to warm up, 6 or 7 reviews, more sight reading, not loads more, like maybe 2 lines of fingers and 2 lines of bow, presuming they're still on doing them separately, which most of them are throughout book one. And then a scale and arpeggio, and preview, like at the end of Gossek, which we will play in a minute. Those, you might be previewing the grace notes, or terrible, the pizzicato at the end. So that by the time they get to the end of the book, there are all these extra things that most pieces need some preview, whereas in the beginning of the book, they're just got one thing each, really. So you don't really need to preview them, you just do them as you get there. So I would say that most of my students, by the end of book one, are probably doing 20 minutes practice, and it's probably fairly effective practice. Like they're probably doing practice for most of those 20 minutes, rather than lying on the floor and reading a book for most of those 20 minutes like they did when they were 4.
Yeah.
And then really I would say for my students, 20 to 30 minutes practice is what I set all the way to the end of book 3.
Oh.
If they're efficient practices, 20 minutes a day, they can get a lot done. And obviously if they want to do more, I'm never going to tell them that they shouldn't do more. And book 4, I would say, becomes 30 to 40 minutes. And then book 4 really should be 40, book 5 should be 40 to 45. But by that time, also, you're really getting a sense of who wants to be in a, who wants to play the violin so they can come to group, see their friends, go to orchestra at school, go on trips, and who wants to come to Suzuki because they're desperate to play the violin and they can't wait to play Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. And you know, those are two very different types of teenagers, and we have to cater for them differently, as well as sometimes together. Okay, questions?
So on this training, we will do book 1 and book 2?
No, we'll do pre-Twinkle and book 1 this year.
Okay.
But I will keep popping in things like I just did with older, no, not older, more advanced books and levels. And then what I did last year, which worked really well, what I've done both years, which has worked really well. My first year I had level 1s and 2s, and we mostly did everything together. The only thing we didn't do together was the teaching points for level 2. The teaching points for level 1 were with everyone, so that the level 2's got a review of their level 1 teaching points. So probably if we have people who want to do level 1 next year, which I hope we will, and if you want to do level 2, which I hope you will, we will do the same thing. So you will get a kind of review of lots of the things we've talked about, and then the teaching points, your level 2 teaching points will be separate from the level 1s. Although then last year we did level 2 and 3 together because I didn't have any level 1s last year, partly because I don't want to keep level 1, 2 and 3 together all the time, because it's too disparate and I don't want to do 2 days of teacher training every week yet. So I decided not to do level 1 last year, and we did level 2 and 3 together, and they decided to do everything all together the whole time. You can't take 2 exams at once unless you've done a year per level. So for example, if you didn't feel ready to take your level 1 exam next June, but you wanted to continue, you could do level 2 next year and then take level 1 and 2 exams in June 25. But you couldn't, next year if you did level 2 and we had level 1s, those level 1s couldn't take level 1 and 2, even though they've had all the training for level 2, because you have to have
1 year for it.
Yeah, because you need to go over it more than once. Like, yes, they will have heard all the information for level 2, but much like when you've had all the information for level 1, you still need to hear it again and to keep talking about it and keep refining your ideas about it and try different things out with your students. That's why doing it this way together is really brilliant, but that doesn't mean that you're actually fast tracking on the next level. It just means that you're getting a kind of sneak preview.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? No?
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Let's play. I'm going to run through the rest of the book. So then we have 3 minuets that were written for children, but they are by Bach, apart from Minuet 3, which is actually by Petzold. Do you want to just move apart a little bit for the recording for Lucy? And hi Lucy and Iram. Okay, so Minuet 1. The way I remember the minuets, Minuet 1 starts with only 1 note in the first bar. They're all Ds. Little droplets of information. Oh, so I forgot to say, I'm mindful of the time. Minuet 2 is the first slur. It's also the first triplet. It's also the first high 3. So you start to see what I mean about the preview, being more and more important as we go through. You do not want to, try and get a kid to learn a piece that's got a D sharp for the first time, a slur for the first time, and triplets for the first time, when they've never done anything like that before. But we have to keep making sure that we're looking ahead to see what challenges come. So, they would play just as an exercise. They do that 10 times, then when they get to it in a piece, easy peasy. Same, and then just learn it separate bows and then build it up. We'll talk about this in much more detail when we do teaching points, but those are the kind of things I mean about the preview.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are loads and loads of different slurs that we've got in Minuet 3. Minor section, so that's one of the pieces they keep playing for years and years and years and years. Okay, the Happy Farmer. So the first time we have hooked bows with an uneven length of note. Mostly it's quite an easy one. It's a different structure to the rest of them, so that's a little bit more tricky for them to remember that it goes do, 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 and then do, 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 and then do, 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 B section, do, do, do. But otherwise it's not too much. Feeling. Question?
Okay, so it's
nothing specifically technical.
Just something we needed to.
No, I mean they need to make sure that they're doing a smooth slur and then a hook, but you don't need to know. I mean, we don't know why.
Okay.
It used to be all hooked. It used to when I was a kid, which I guess they just thought was a bit boring.
Yeah, I've got my own book and it does.
Yeah, it's got separated. Yeah. Okay, let's play Gossip and then we'll be finished for today. No, don't worry. Brilliant. So you can see there's a million things in that piece that they've never done before. Semiquavers, pizzicato, really fast notes, loads and loads to learn. So again, you can see that the review and preview becomes more and more important because the reviews make the working pieces easier, and the preview means that they know bits and pieces in advance. Yes. Very good. Let's have a bow. Thank you both very much. Thank you, Iram and Lucy. See you next week.